The first thing they noticed about Commander Alara Voss was not her rank, not the ribbons on her chest, and not the quiet authority in the way she stood. It was the silence she carried with her. She didn't fill rooms with small talk. She didn't laugh loudly in the mess hall. She didn't lean against walls with her arms crossed, pretending to be one of them. She stood straight, listened more than she spoke. And when she spoke, every word was deliberate. From the moment she arrived at Forward Operating Base Riven, the 19th Frontier Battalion knew one thing for certain. This commander was different. And difference in a place like this was rarely welcomed. The battalion had been stationed in the region for almost a year, long enough for routine to become comfort, long enough for rules to soften at the edges. Their previous commander had believed morale came first. He shared meals with the troops, let minor infractions slide, called everyone by their first names. They liked him. They also lost 17 soldiers under his command. When Alara Voss replaced him, there was no ceremony, no speeches from high command, no band, just a transport vehicle rolling through the gates at dawn. Dust settled slowly as she stepped out. She was shorter than some expected. Composed. Her eyes scanned the base once. The perimeter, the guard towers, the movement patterns. She noticed everything. The first briefing happened less than an hour after her arrival. The battalion assembled under a fading sky, boots crunching against gravel, faces tight with curiosity and judgment. Alara stepped forward. She didn't smile. "My name is Commander Alara Voss," she said. "I will not waste your time with promises." Pause. "I'm not here to be liked. I am here to bring you home alive." Silence followed. No applause. No acknowledgement. Just exchanged glances and quiet disbelief. That was the moment many of them decided they didn't like her. Within days the changes began. Patrol schedules were rewritten. Rest cycles enforced without exception. Equipment inspections doubled. Soldiers who had grown used to flexibility now found themselves corrected, written up, reassigned. She split up familiar patrol teams, moved veterans away from comfort zones, placed inexperienced soldiers under stricter supervision. To the battalion it felt like punishment. "She doesn't trust us," someone muttered in the barracks. "She thinks we're incompetent," another said. Alara heard none of it directly, but she felt it. She felt it in the stiffness of salutes, in the silence after briefings, in the way conversations stopped when she entered a room. She accepted it without comment. At night, while the base slept, Alara remained awake. Her command quarters were small and bare. A desk, a chair, a lamp. Maps covered the table. Digital screens flickered with surveillance footage. She studied patrol routes, enemy movement patterns, supply lines that didn't align with reported threats. Something wasn't right. Enemy activity had increased, but not in ways that made sense. There were gaps, hesitations, feints. It was as if someone on the inside was helping them avoid detection. Alara made a note. She always made notes. Lieutenant Marcus Harker was the battalion's intelligence officer. Clean record. Efficient. Respected. When Alara requested updated reconnaissance on Sector Gray, Harker delivered it promptly. The route appeared clear. Enemy presence minimal. Low risk. Alara reviewed the data twice. Her instincts stirred. She requested confirmation. Harker assured her it was solid. Trust was a currency in command. She authorized the patrol. The ambush happened just before noon. The first explosion tore through the lead vehicle, sending debris into the air. Gunfire erupted from concealed positions. The patrol scrambled for cover. 2 vehicles destroyed. 5 soldiers wounded. 1 critically. They barely made it back. The battalion was furious, and they blamed Alara. She rushed it. She didn't listen. She's trying to prove something. She stood before them afterward, her face composed, her voice calm. "We will adapt," she said. "We will learn." Inside something hardened. Alara requested a formal investigation. The response was immediate. Denied. Higher command didn't want disruption, didn't want blame, didn't want questions. She understood the politics. She also understood the danger. And so, quietly, she began looking deeper. She reviewed radio logs, compared timestamps, noted discrepancies. Supplies arrived earlier than scheduled. Fuel usage didn't match patrol activity. Communications rerouted briefly, then returned to normal. Small things. But small things were where truth hid. The second blow came from Sergeant Nathan Kane. Kane was everything Alara was not. Charismatic, approachable, a natural leader. The troops trusted him. During a briefing, he spoke out of turn. "She doesn't trust us," Kane said. "She treats us like machines." Murmurs of agreement filled the room. Alara watched their faces. She dismissed the briefing without argument. That night, alone, she sat on her bunk and stared at the wall. She unbuttoned her jacket. The scar across her ribs caught the light. A reminder. Years earlier, under a commander who wanted to be liked, she followed an order she knew was wrong. That commander ignored warning signs, ignored fatigue, ignored intelligence. Half the unit died. Alara survived, and she swore she would never lead that way, even if it meant standing alone. As weeks passed, pressure mounted. Enemy movement intensified. Morale dropped. Alara canceled operations minutes before launch, pulled patrols back when instincts warned her. Each decision increased resentment. Each decision saved lives. But no one noticed yet. Then came the complaint. An official report sent to high command, accusing Alara of reckless leadership and hostile command practices. At the bottom were signatures. Lieutenant Harker, Sergeant Kane, others. A coordinated move. Alara was given 72 hours. Before a formal review. The battalion believed this was justice. They thought the problem would be removed. Alara read the notice once. Then she began preparing. The notice from high command sat on Alara Voss's desk, its digital timestamp blinking softly in the low light. 72 hours. That was how long she had. Before her authority would be questioned. Before her command would be placed under review. Before the battalion would finally believe they were free of her. Outside her quarters, the base carried on. Engines hummed. Guards rotated. Radios crackled with routine chatter. But something had changed. The silence around her was no longer passive. It was deliberate. In the mess hall, conversation stopped when she entered. Chairs scraped back just a little too fast. Eyes dropped, not in respect but avoidance. Salutes were still given, but they were quick now. Mechanical. Alara returned every one of them. She had learned long ago. That authority was not something you demanded. It was something you carried, even when others tried to strip it away. That night she locked her door and spread the evidence across her desk. Logs, intercepts, supply manifests. Patterns emerged slowly like shapes in fog. Routes cleared just before enemy movement. Patrol timings leaked hours in advance. Supplies diverted, then quietly corrected. Someone inside the battalion was feeding information outward. Not recklessly, carefully, professionally. Alara narrowed the window. It couldn't be many people. Access was limited, and the names that remained were the ones she trusted the least, or the ones everyone else trusted too much. Lieutenant Harker's reports were flawless on the surface, but when Alara overlaid them with raw satellite data, tiny inconsistencies appeared. Coordinates off by seconds. Time gaps too clean to be accidental. Harker was smart. Smart enough to hide his tracks from anyone who wasn't looking closely. Alara was looking very closely. She moved carefully. She didn't confront him. Didn't accuse. She requested more data. Asked neutral questions. Harker answered calmly, confidently. Too confidently. When she dismissed him, he smiled. It was the wrong smile. Sergeant Kane was harder. He wasn't subtle. He didn't need to be. The battalion loved him. When he spoke, people listened. When he questioned Alara's orders, the doubt spread like wildfire. "She doesn't understand us," he said openly one night. "She's never been one of us." Alara heard about it hours later. She said nothing. Instead, she made changes. She shifted radio codes, reassigned logistics oversight, adjusted patrol departure times without notice. If someone was leaking information, they would slip. They always did. The battalion grew restless. Operations slowed. Caution replaced momentum. To soldiers raised on action, it felt like suffocation. Whispers turned into complaints. Complaints turned into resentment. "She's scared. She doesn't trust her own unit. She's going to get us killed by hesitation." Alara listened to every report. Read every message. She did not defend herself. Defenses wasted time. Proof did not. 2 days before the review, another patrol returned early. No casualties. No contact. But Alara noticed something in the logs. The enemy had moved, but not into position. They had withdrawn minutes before the patrol arrived. As if warned. As if told not to engage. Alara sat back in her chair. That was the confirmation she needed. She isolated the communication window. Only 3 individuals had access. During that specific time frame, Parker, Kane, and a junior communications specialist, who lacked both motive and access history. Alara ruled the specialist out. The truth narrowed. That night, she activated a quiet protocol, an encrypted channel, known only to a handful of commanders. She transmitted the evidence, not accusations, data. Let the facts speak where she could not. The next morning, the battalion assembled for a routine briefing. Kane stood with crossed arms, confidence written across his face. Harker leaned against the wall, relaxed. Alara entered last. She began the briefing as usual. Mission updates, weather reports, logistics. Nothing unusual. Then she paused. Effective immediately, she said. Communications will shift to secondary encryption. A murmur rippled through the room. Harker's expression flickered. Just for a moment, Alara saw it. That afternoon, the pressure became open hostility. A soldier refused a reassignment. Another questioned an order in front of others. Alara addressed each calmly, firmly. By evening, the message was clear. The battalion no longer believed in her. They were waiting for her removal. She returned to her quarters exhausted. Not physically, mentally. She sat on the edge of her bunk and allowed herself one moment, one breath. She thought of the unit she had lost years ago. The commander who smiled too often, promised too much. She remembered the sound of gunfire, the chaos, the silence afterward. She had survived then. She would survive this. The formal review began the next morning. A secure video link connected her to senior officers hundreds of miles away. Faces filled the screen. Cold. Evaluating. Alara stood at attention. The accusations were read aloud. Insubordination, recklessness, loss of morale. Each word landed heavily. When asked to respond, Alara did not speak immediately. She activated the file transfer. Permission to submit evidence, she said. Granted. Data flowed. Logs, intercepts, timelines. The room on the other side of the screen fell silent. Questions followed. Detailed. Precise. Alara answered calmly. She did not accuse. She presented. When the call ended, she returned to her duties as if nothing had changed. Outside, the battalion waited. No announcement came. No resolution. Only tension. That night, military police arrived quietly. They moved fast. Harker tried to run. Kane did not. The battalion watched in disbelief, as both men were restrained and escorted away. Confusion spread. Then understanding. Alara was summoned to the parade ground at dawn. The battalion stood assembled. No murmurs this time. No crossed arms. Just silence. Alara stepped forward. I know you doubted me, she said. I understand why. She paused. But every decision I made was to protect you, even when it meant standing alone. She saluted. The battalion returned it. Slower. Stronger. Something had shifted. The base did not return to normal after the arrests. It couldn't. Trust, once broken, did not snap back into place like a repaired wire. It had to be rebuilt, slowly, carefully, painfully. The morning after Lieutenant Harker and Sergeant Kane were taken away, the battalion moved as if under a heavy fog. Orders were followed. Salutes were sharp again. But something deeper stirred beneath the surface. Guilt. Some soldiers avoided Alara's gaze entirely. Others held it longer than necessary, as if searching for something they had missed all along. She noticed both. She acknowledged neither. Leadership, she had learned, was not about claiming vindication. It was about stability. High Command confirmed the findings within 48 hours. The intelligence breach had been ongoing for months. Information sold quietly. Patrol routes leaked just enough to manipulate outcomes. The damage was extensive. And the shame. Sure. Alara was formally cleared. Her authority restored without qualification. No apology accompanied the message. None was needed. She addressed the battalion again that evening. Not on the parade ground. In the open motor pool. Under hanging lights and cooling engines. A deliberate choice. I won't speak about betrayal, she said. I won't speak about blame. She paused. What matters now is what we do next. She laid out new operational protocols. Revised security measures. A forward-looking plan. Not once did she say, I was right. Not once did she remind them. They had doubted her. That restraint did more than anger ever could. Still, the weight did not lift. At night, Ilara returned to her quarters, more exhausted than she had been before, not because of the workload, but because isolation, even when justified, left scars of its own. She dreamed of the past, of voices calling for help, of orders she couldn't take back. She woke before dawn. Every time, the battalion began to change. Slowly, a soldier approached her after a briefing. "Ma'am," he said, hesitating, "I questioned your call last month." Ilara waited. "You saved my squad," he finished. She nodded once. "That's why I'm here. Nothing more." Another week passed. Patrols resumed with renewed discipline. Communications tightened. Mistakes dropped sharply. The battalion was becoming sharper than it had ever been. Not friendlier, better. Then intelligence reports shifted again. Enemy forces were consolidating. Not retreating. Not probing. Preparing. Satellite imagery confirmed movement toward the northern corridor, a region filled with villages, trade routes, and civilians. If the enemy pushed through there, it would be catastrophic. Ilara studied the data late into the night. There was no doubt. A large-scale operation was coming. She briefed the battalion at first light. "This will not be a show of force," she said. "This will be containment and evacuation." She outlined the risks. The timelines were tight. The terrain unforgiving. Extraction windows limited. No one complained. No one interrupted. They listened. Preparations began immediately. Equipment checks. Medical staging. Aviation coordination. Ilara moved constantly. From command tent to motor pool. From briefing room to landing zone. She spoke little. Her presence was enough. The night before deployment, she walked the perimeter alone. The air was still. The sky heavy with cloud. She stopped near the outer fence and rested a hand against the cold metal. For the first time since her arrival, she allowed herself to wonder, what if this was the mission she didn't come back from? The thought didn't frighten her. What frightened her was the idea of failing them. The operation began before sunrise. Helicopters lifted into the dark. Convoys rolled out under blackout conditions. Ilara traveled with the forward command unit. As the sun rose, the situation deteriorated faster than expected. Enemy forces advanced aggressively. Civilians fled in panic. Communications strained under the load. Ilara adapted, redirected routes, adjusted extraction points. She never hesitated. Midway through the operation, the primary extraction zone was compromised. Enemy fire cut off access. A transport helicopter was forced down. Casualties mounted. The evacuation stalled. Ilara took control personally. She moved forward under fire, coordinating units face to face. Her calm voice cut through chaos. Orders were clear, decisive. Lives were saved. As the last civilians were moved toward secondary extraction, enemy pressure intensified. The rear guard struggled to hold the line. Ilara remained with them. "Go," she ordered the last transport. "I'll follow." The pilot hesitated. "Go," she repeated. Explosions lit the horizon. As the final helicopter lifted, Ilara ran. The ground shook beneath her. She boarded just as debris tore through the air. The aircraft rose hard and fast. Below them, the battlefield burned. When they returned to base, the battalion waited. No cheers. No noise. As Ilara stepped down from the helicopter, the soldiers stood at attention. Then, without command, they saluted. Not out of regulation. Out of respect. Ilara returned the salute. For the first time, her expression softened. Just slightly. That night, alone once more, she sat in her quarters. The silence felt different now. Not isolating. She looked at the scar on her side and thought of the promise she had made years ago. She had kept it. The morning after the evacuation was quiet. Not the fragile quiet of tension, but the heavy stillness that followed survival. The base woke slowly. Engines remained silent longer than usual. Boots moved with purpose, not urgency. Voices stayed low, respectful. The battalion had returned whole. Battered. Exhausted. But alive. Ilara Voss stood on the observation platform overlooking the motor pool. Below her, vehicles bore fresh scars. Scratches. Burn marks. Broken glass hastily taped over. Evidence of what they had endured. She rested her hands on the rail, feeling the ache in her shoulders, the dull throb in her legs. Pain was familiar. It meant she had survived. The after-action reports came quickly. Civilians evacuated, over 400. Friendly casualties, minimal. Enemy advance stalled. High command labeled the operation a decisive success. Commendations were drafted. Citations prepared. Alara read none of them. She had never measured success by words written after the fact. She measured it by who stood on their feet the next morning. Later that day, a young lieutenant approached her hesitantly. "Ma'am," he said, "I wanted to say, I was wrong." Alara waited. "I thought you didn't care about us," he continued. "I thought you were just cold." She studied him for a moment. "Cold keeps people alive," she said. "But it doesn't mean empty." He nodded, swallowing. "Thank you, ma'am." She returned to her work. The battalion gathered that evening for a formal address. This time it was not mandatory. Every soldier came anyway. They stood in formation under a fading sky, faces tired but steady. Alara stepped forward. "I won't tell you this was easy," she said, "and I won't pretend we didn't lose trust along the way." She paused. "But you held the line. You adapted. And you protected those who couldn't protect themselves." She looked across their faces. "That is what matters." No applause followed. Something stronger replaced it. Understanding. Weeks passed. Routine returned. But it was not the same routine as before. Orders were questioned less. Not because curiosity died, but because confidence grew. Soldiers trained harder, prepared better. They had seen what discipline saved. High command eventually summoned Alara. The message was brief. A reassignment. Promotion pending. Command of a larger operational group. She read the notice once. Then she folded it carefully and placed it in her pocket. That night, she walked the base one last time. The perimeter fence. The watchtowers. The quiet hum of generators. A place that had tested her. A place she had endured. A place she had changed. The next morning, the battalion assembled without being told. Alara stood before them, her pack already prepared. "I'm being reassigned," she said. No one spoke. "You will receive a new commander," she continued. "Treat them with professionalism. Pause. And give them time." A few soldiers smiled faintly. As she turned to leave, a voice broke the silence. "Ma'am." She stopped. A sergeant stepped forward, then another. Soon the entire battalion stood straighter. "We didn't like you," the sergeant said honestly. "But you never stopped doing what was right." Alara met his gaze. "That's the job." She walked toward the transport vehicle. As she passed the formation, each soldier raised a hand in salute. Not perfectly synchronized. Not ceremonial. Real. Alara returned it. And for the first time since taking command, she smiled. Just once. The vehicle rolled out through the gates. Dust rose behind it. The battalion remained standing. Long after it disappeared. Years later, new soldiers would hear stories. About a commander who never laughed much. Who enforced rules relentlessly. Who made unpopular decisions. They would also hear that under her command, the battalion suffered fewer losses than ever before. They would hear that she stood her ground when betrayal came from within, that she led from the front when it mattered most. Commander Alara Voss was never the leader they wanted. She was the leader who carried the weight, so others did not have to. And in the end, that was enough. Don't forget to like and share and also subscribe for more interesting stories like this.